Breaking news, an ICE agent shot and killed a woman in Minneapolis this morning. The story is developing as we speak, so we're going to come back to it through the hour, but we're definitely going to start with it after we get through that awful story. The insanity of this Venezuela thing stacks up by the minute. We're just trying to keep up, but we'll recite and analyze the latest. Then we got to talk about Cuba and Greenland, those two massive threats to America. Encouraging new polls regarding young American men bailing on Trump. Plus, this week we got fresh revisionist history from the White House on the January 6th insurrection, and GOP infighting continues. We'll give you the latest. Despite all of that news, Epstein leaks and takes, they're not going away, so we're going to give you the latest there, too. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54. Ravi, I think you have seen this video, and I have not. It just happened.
Yeah, we're loading it up now to play. I've seen a couple of angles. So here it is for people on video. So you can see this maroon truck, which is the person who,
like a little SUV.
Yeah, it's like a SUV. This is the civilian, and then the truck next to it, the pickup truck, is ICE agents. You can see them approaching the truck here on the side, the driver's side door. The truck backs up and then pulls out, and as it pulls out, and Jeremy, you could rewind that back. As it pulls out, it appears that one of the ICE agents on the driver's side door, from what we can tell, opens fire into the driver's side window as the car pulls out. And we don't have a perfect angle of it, but
it looks like Jeremy, she's trying to leave.
Yeah, Jeremy, if you could bring us back to that moment. Yeah, we'll do it one more time here. So if you watch it here, So you've got the SUV, and the truck pulls right up, right? And what we could see here is the car is about to leave, right? And pay attention to the one guy closest to the driver's side door. He's the one who I believe, if you could see him, opens fire. You could see him with his hand out. Mm-hmm. And I think from what we could tell here, and the mayor seems, as we'll get to, seems to share at least my reaction to this. Anything's possible in terms of, like, we don't have a full angle on what's on the other side of this, but there is absolutely no evidence based on this video that this truck posed an imminent danger to any of those ICE agents. And the person who shot it is still standing as the car peels off and leaves.
Not in the direct way of the way it's going. It looks an awful lot to me like the driver began to back up as they were approaching, and then saw a weapon brandished and started trying to speed away, which is
here's a better angle, by the way. Yeah, watch this. This is an even better angle. I think this is going to give us more information. So you could see the two ICE agents approaching the door right here, right? Watch the other agent. Ready?
There it is.
He was a little bit in the front of the car, right? So Jeremy, go right back to that one part right there, because that's going to be the key part.
So one agent is trying to pull the driver out of the car. The driver doesn't want to be pulled out of the car, so the driver is driving away, and the person who has positioned themselves in front of the car takes that as a threat, and instead of steps to the side, and as they step to the side, fires through the windshield and hits the driver.
And Jeremy, I don't know if you could pause it in the key moment. The moment I want to pause is when the person who opens fire is out of the way of the truck, but still has the gun pointed at the windshield and shoots. If you can get to that point, that I think is the key moment there, because this is a person who's not in danger anymore.
Disgusting.
Yeah. And Jeremy, I don't know if you could pull that back, but that's my read on it, Jason. I don't know what your read on it is.
Yeah, there's no imminent danger here, judging from this video at all.
Yeah, that angle, I think, gives us, everything we need to know. There's nobody else that conceivably was in the path of this truck.
What we know so far from reporting is that this is an American citizen who was there as a legal observer, that they are the wife of a prominent activist, and yeah, if we have the videos of Mayor Frey, let's go to those. His reaction.
There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. to ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So they are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed.
Yeah, I'll go further. I mean, this person was murdered. And I want to be clear for people like Ravi, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to meet Jacob Frey. He is not an inflammatory person. He is not a person that these are not things that Jacob Frey would say lightly. Like, he's not a person who's looking for attention in this sort of way. You know, that's not who the guy is. I trust his judgment on this and believe his feelings to be very genuine.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking at what we just saw, right?
Yeah.
Which is we just saw two angles. One that I think is fairly definitive. And listeners, if you're on the podcast, you'll probably have seen them if you want. And
If you're audio, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, on the audio side of things. And you know, like the key thing here is if you could pull a gun out and shoot it, you can get out of the way of the truck. And at that point, you could press charges on this person for whatever the equivalent of pulling out in that way. Like if we, and you could have there's plenty you could do there. They had the license plate number, the person's leaving. It's not like they're going to go to Mexico, right? You can knock on their door and arrest them if you feel like a crime has been committed.
Well,
if you think the pulling out, like
we're watching it again here. You've got a person calmly walking up to the vehicle. They're starting this conversation. The vehicle window is open. They start trying to open the door. The vehicle starts to back up. Somebody from the ICE agent from the other vehicle had positioned themselves in front of the vehicle. So clearly what they're doing is they're trying to tell the person to move, but the person who fired the shot positioned themselves in front of the vehicle, presumably to block the person from leaving. So they're
but the thing is, and they got out of the way.
And they were out of the way when they fired the shot.
Yeah. And they just got out of the way, right? So like the very fact that this person got out of the way, like, I think tells us what we need to know about whether they were like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
this is the shit we've been talking about for a while, that we've been warning about, that you've got a bunch of people who want to play paramilitary and want to dress up in all the gear and want to do this stuff and maybe took their $50,000 incentive to join. And, you know, I don't know the person who pulled this trigger, but it sure looks to me like a situation, somebody who wanted to do this, wanted to be in this. This is, I mean, you know, you're saying truck because where you're from in the East Coast,
yeah,
folks call this
SUV.
a truck.
SUV.
This is a mid-size SUV. This is a maroon mid-size SUV. This looks like the kind of vehicle that I don't know who this person is who was shot, but I'm guessing it's probably what they take their kids to school in. It's a drop-off. It's a mom vehicle. Okay, that's what she's in, and this does not look, from the video that we're looking at here, like this person was any kind of a threat. This looks a lot like a person who came to work wanting to kill somebody. And they did.
Yeah. And, you know, again, we have people in masks, which we've been talking about for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is this? Like, we now have masked people walking our streets, shooting at people, right? That's the federal government. That's where we are in 2026.
Mm-hmm. This is Kent State.
Yeah, and so you know we'll see what the fallout from this will be. But obviously the mayor's on fire about this. I haven't seen yet the reactions from across the spectrum, but we have to draw a line in the sand here. Like the courts helpfully drew a line in the sand and forced Trump to at least pull some troops out over the past few weeks. And we've got to make a big moment out of this. Like, this is the kind of thing that we have to get our backs up about. And when we talk about what matters enough to rise to the level for mass action, this has got to be the kind of thing that brings us into the streets and brings more people out there to make, in a civil, disobedient way, in a peaceful way, makes ICE's job harder through civil disobedience, through safe and peaceful protests. We need to tell ICE, show ICE and the Trump administration that the way they're conducting themselves in cities is unacceptable.
Well, the mayor's right. They need to get the fuck out of Minneapolis. Like, Jeremy, roll this again, because it's not just the shooter. There's another piece to this, and that is that the first agent who approaches the vehicle is clearly not approaching to de-escalate. This is a car parked in the middle of a residential street. They walk up. The driver gets out, walks over, and is immediately trying, upon like no conversation, is immediately trying to yank this door open and pull the person out of the vehicle. There's no de-escalation happening here at all. By the way, there was no escalation in the first place. There's just an escalation by ICE. That's where the escalation comes from. So, all right, we can stop watching it.
Yeah. Well, obviously we'll continue monitoring this as we go. And you know, it's breaking, so it's possible we'll come back to it even throughout the hour.
Sorry, I'm going to say one more thing about it. Like, if I'm parked in the middle of the street because I'm, exercising a First Amendment right, or I'm being an observer of what's going on with ICE, and somebody rushes up to my vehicle and starts trying to pull me out of it, I'm gonna try to move my vehicle. It is the natural thing to do. Like, ICE is the aggressor here, and they murdered this person. So I'm spun up about it. I know we have other stuff to talk about. How about we take our first break and then come back and talk about those things? So we'll go to break here. If there's one thing that I'll definitely bring with me into 2026, it's Mando Whole Body Deodorant. Mando's Whole Body Deodorant is safe to use anywhere in your body, and I mean anywhere. Mando was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. It's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. Mando has options to choose from, like their solid deodorant stick, formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts, or their spray deodorant, aluminum-free and ideal for hard-to-reach places. Personally, I'm a stick guy, but both options are amazing. You can choose from a variety of fresh scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. Mando is clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. 12 hours after a shower, the average man's Grundle odor level was a 5 out of 10. With Mando, the average Grundle odor level is a 0 out of 10. Some men mask their BO with scents. Mando men get the job done right. Don't mask it, Mando it. Available in retailers near you, or head to shopmando.com, because for a limited time, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code MAJORITY at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide and free shipping. shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. ED is more common than you think and simpler to treat than ever. Through HIMS, you can connect online with a licensed provider to access personalized treatment options discreetly and on your own terms. Through HIMS, you can access personalized prescription treatment options for ED if prescribed. HIMS offers access to ED treatment options ranging from personalized products to trusted generics that cost 95% less than brand names if prescribed. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. HIMS brings extra care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatments that put your goals first. This isn't one-size-fits-all care that forgets you in the waiting room. It's your health and goals put first, with real medical providers making sure you get what you need to get results. Think of HIMS as your digital front door that gets you back to your old self, with simple 100% online access to trusted treatments for ED and more, all in one place. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/majority. That's hims.com/majority for your free online visit. hims.com/majority. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information. Actual price will depend on product and subscription plan.
Well, early Saturday morning, Jason, I think most people know this by now, the U.S. military conducted airstrikes in Venezuela and captured President Nicolás Maduro. The DOJ announced that Maduro and his wife were indicted in the Southern District of New York on charges including narco-terrorism, conspiracy, cocaine importation, possession of machine guns, and destructive devices. This was a joint operation involving over 150 aircraft from 20 different land and sea bases from across the Western Hemisphere. Maduro was captured without resistance. No U.S. troops were killed. One helicopter was struck by gunfire. Approximately 6 soldiers were injured, and Venezuelan officials say at least 80 of their folks were killed, including military and civilians. The country is now under the, we could call it what it is, but the vice president, Delcy Rodríguez, was sworn in as interim president, and Trump has announced the U.S. will assume control of Venezuela until a safe, proper, and judicious transition, and that we're not afraid to have boots on the ground. We also just got an announcement yesterday that Trump has claimed that Venezuela would send 30 to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S., which is roughly $1.8 to $3 billion worth at the current prices. Unclear if Venezuela gets anything in return. Where do we start?
So there are 2 competing camps that wanted this in the Trump administration. And I guess they both won. One, and the most obvious one, is the oil companies and the oil executives that back Trump, help him get his second term. And, they have this very Putin-like view, like the way Putin views Ukraine, of we had oil interests in that country when they nationalized oil, and therefore that's really our oil under the ground. And so we've got to go in and take it back, which is why, all this, first of all, none of this has to do with narco trafficking, obviously, at this point, right? Neither camp was really about narco trafficking. We don't really need to get into that. I think that's pretty well established at this point, because they just gave up the ghost on talking about drugs ever since this happened, other than, that's what the old indictment's for, and that's what he did. So that's what he'll stand trial for. But everything else has been about oil so far, with the exception of the people who, understandably are saying, and this gets to the other camp, that the people of Venezuela were suffering under Maduro. Now, I have a lot of questions as to whether that suffering is going to be alleviated by Maduro's vice president coming into power instead of the leader of the opposition coming into power. But let's put that aside for a moment. That's the Marco Rubio camp, right? That wanted this. The anti-Cuba, or hawkish on Cuba, hawkish on Venezuela, South Florida politics thing. And as I said in some posts this week, this is the danger, in my opinion, among many others, of having your Secretary of State also be your national security advisor. It's only ever happened one other time in American history. That was Henry Kissinger, who was pretty hawkish and seen as somebody who got us involved in a lot of foreign entanglements militarily. And so when you are in the Situation Room, or whatever the hell that room at Mar-a-Lago is, and you don't have your national security advisor who has an entire apparatus that talks about military tools at their disposal, arguing for one thing, and your Secretary of State, who has an entire diplomatic corps on the other side of the table, arguing for something else. Instead, what you have is Marco Rubio in both roles, from his South Florida politician ideology, just pushing the president to do this. And ultimately, that's a huge win for oil companies. And I don't know, to me, it's pretty obvious that this was the president of the United States ordering American soldiers to go into harm's way and take the lives of other people in order to enrich American oil companies.
Yeah, I think it might even be worse than that, because I think in Trump's simplistic brain, we can just take the oil from Venezuela and our companies can operate. But the more I looked into it, the more complicated it is, because of the nature of what the Venezuelan crude is and how hard it is to refine and pull out of the ground, and how outdated the infrastructure has been since the Hugo Chavez regime essentially decimated the infrastructure, and that it would take a long time actually to be able to significantly increase output. And I saw some estimates that said it would take a decade to get it to the mid-90s levels of output. And so putting that aside, that's certainly, Trump thinks this is what it's about. And you could follow the fluctuations of the oil company stocks. They spiked, and now they've leveled off, I think, as people started to realize what I just said, right? But the administration has given us Maduro as a drug kingpin killing Americans, which is patently absurd, given that they pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez of Honduras, who was actually indicted for running one of the largest drug trafficking operations in the world. And that's just one of many drug traffickers that he happened to be a head of state. But there are plenty of others like Ross Ulbricht, who ran the Silk Road online drug marketplace. I mean, this is not an administration serious about the war on drugs. They said that Venezuela stole our oil and we're taking it back. I just talked about that. They said they want to keep China, Russia, and Iran out of the Western Hemisphere, although those ambassadors were standing right next to the vice president when she was sworn in and seemed totally happy about it. They said they're putting everyone on notice, Cuba, Colombia, maybe even Greenland. Maybe there's some truth to that. The American public, I think, will have some obvious questions about all that. I mean, we haven't really been given a clear rationale. And I think the biggest part of this is we have been through it. You've been to it with Afghanistan. And I've spent a brief time in Iraq just flying through. You served in Afghanistan. We are old enough, Jason, to know that taking out a foreign leader is the easy part. And I would imagine there are probably at least 100 leaders across the world that if you gave us a week's notice, we could take them out, whether it's through a bombing or something more sophisticated like an extraction like that. We have the most powerful military in the world. Taking out leaders is not in any way surprising, our ability to do that. This was obviously a sophisticated operation, but they could have easily have bombed too, and it would have the outcome of removing the leader. The question is what comes next. And we know from Iraq, Afghanistan, and from history that that's the hard part, and that's measured in decades, not in days or hours. And you could already see, like, you have these collectivos, which are the government militias, out enforcing Caracas, interrogating people, searching people's phones for support of the U.S. attacks. They issued a 90-day emergency decree. The sort of strongman who's in charge of the security apparatus is still in charge. And there are just a lot of questions. Like, what is this? It's not like we've removed somebody and now the democratically elected opposition leader, as you mentioned, is in power. It's just the vice president under the same regime with the same security apparatus, except really riled up, is in charge.
Same people who lost the last election and refused to leave, if that sounds familiar to anybody. Okay. Right. Our North Star in this show is about helping people have these conversations with people in their lives. So because I've been talking about this a lot, I've had a lot of incoming from people who have been saying things, and this is, I bet, what a lot of people in our audience are hearing, saying things about how, well, look at what Obama did. Obama used drones. Obama did this. Obama did that. There is a difference. Now, first of all, you need to understand, you don't actually need to defend every single military action that Obama or Biden or any other Democratic president took. Not all of them were good. All right. For instance, Libya and Gaddafi. At the time, I thought that what Obama was doing was correct in Libya. So did Obama. And I think it's important to point out that that was about trying to stop a massacre, because there were protesters in Libya. It was during the Arab Spring, and Gaddafi was preparing to slaughter those people. And so Obama took steps, bombed the security apparatus there. What that resulted in is instability in the country. Libya was overthrown. Gaddafi was taken out and killed by the people of the country. And then it was thrown into chaos. And I think it is important to point out that in that case, Obama said afterwards that that was the biggest mistake of his presidency, because we used to have leaders who admitted when they made mistakes. But here is the important distinction here, is that, yes, there are attacks that were carried out by drone in many cases, not always by drone, things like the bin Laden raid, by the Obama administration without getting specific, permission from Congress or alerting Congress right away necessarily. But all of those fit into the authorization of for use of military force that was passed by Congress in the wake of 9/11, because those were in the global war on terror. I've had so many people sending me chat GPT screenshots over DM of, listings of attacks that Obama did about the global war on terrorism. And I keep wanting to reply with, like, okay, thank you for explaining what the global war on terrorism was to a dude who was in the global war on terrorism. But there is a huge difference here, is that in each of those cases, what Obama was trying to do was act in the national interest of the United States against people who were direct threats to the United States, and oftentimes in a way that would directly affect humanitarian interests on the ground. And in none of those cases, none that anybody can show me whatsoever, did Biden or Obama use the military as a private mercenary force to enrich the profits, further enrich the profits of American oil companies. And that is a humongous fucking difference, because somebody who served in the army and went overseas, it makes a big damn difference when you know that you're not being sent to make rich people in your country richer. You're being sent because the president genuinely believes that your country has an interest that's not just about money for rich people.
Yeah, I think, like, remind people that just 2 months ago, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, declared the U.S. strategy of regime change was over. Trump ran as an isolationist. And you, again, you, I mean, you nail it. Like, anybody who lived through that period of time, whether they agreed with it or not, and I hated things like the Iraq War under Bush, for example, could tell you what the war on terror was and why it mattered, like whether it was being waged correctly or not. I would ask anybody to tell me why it is we need control over Venezuela's oil reserves and how that's going to change their lives. Like, do they even know what the price of oil is today versus what it was 2 years ago? It's not that high right now, right? Do they know that the U.S. production has massively increased over the past 30 years and that we're, like, quote unquote energy independent as a country, right? Do they know that? What is it that we're fighting this for? The president won't explain. Like, with everything, whether it was Bush or Obama, and I hated a lot of Bush's policy, and I agreed with a lot of Obama, but not everything. He could explain it when he took out Anwar al-Awlaki, right? Like, these are all things that you could explain, whether people agreed with it or not. This is inexplicable. And it's also being tied to a much larger, much more aggressive policy, which we should probably talk about, where, number one, Cuba is now unstable. And
actually, Ravi, before we even get to that, can we finish this point about the difference between going to Congress and not going to Congress? And then I do want to get to Cuba, but
yeah,
you made a really good point about, the strikes like al-Awlaki. I had this, on social media, some MAGA person was coming at me talking about, all the times Obama, had these strikes without going to Congress. And again, the authorization for use of military force in regard to the war on terror was passed by Congress. It gave authority to the president of the United States, any president of any party, to do these things. And for example, and one thing you can say to people when they bring this stuff up with you, I don't have a problem with Trump's strike in his first term on al-Baghdadi, which he did not go to Congress and get permission to do that. And the reason I don't have a problem with that is because that's part of the war on terror, which was authorized by Congress for use of military force. This is entirely different. And two things that we need to note here. One, this is why they've been setting the stage by inventing the term narco-terrorist for the last year since they took office, so that they could sort of vaguely make the argument that this fell under an anti-terrorism mission, that it somehow fell under the old AUMF. It's all bogus, but that's what they've been trying to do. But also, if we have any doubt that Trump is doing this for the same reasons that Putin went into Ukraine, or that the Soviet Union did what they did, or that the Nazis went into Poland and the rest of Europe, and it's just to get the resources, or, by the way, whoever was president during Avatar went into Pandora to get unobtainium, it's the same move. And if you have any doubt of it, I would point you to two things. One, Trump said today, in reference to the things you were talking about earlier about the difficulty of getting that oil for American companies, he said today that we are going to heavily subsidize American oil companies going in to do that so that they can make a lot of money. And he said to make the people of Venezuela rich and to make more Americans rich. All right. That's number one. But number two, Trump has been saying for years, first of all, he pretended for a long time that he didn't support the war in Iraq. And one of the things he said when he would make the false claim that he didn't support the war in Iraq was that he believed we should have kept the oil. I mean, it's not hard to understand that this is the exact same thing, except this time Trump wants to keep the oil. And by the way, two things can be true. You can still be incredibly impressed with the professionalism of, U.S. Special Forces and of Delta Force, who clearly, working with our intelligence community and the CIA, had a lot of help from people on the ground. They had done a lot of groundwork. I'm not saying I think the operation was a good thing to do. I think it was a terrible thing to do. But to your point, we have the ability to do these things because we have the most lethal and most professional military in the history of the world. You can say that, believe that, appreciate those people's service, and be very upset that they were sent to do this.
Well, let me advance a slightly alternative even less justifiable emphasis on what I think Trump is doing here. And again, this is we're throwing darts at the board here. Obviously, it would be nice to have a president who we could trust to actually tell us what the rationale is. But here's another theory. Trump, I'm going to combine two different things in one. Number one is that Trump is really just about relationships and spite. So he's the New York Times reported that that Maduro was dancing in a way that appeared to mock Trump, right? And one could be like, that's a silly theory, but we have so much evidence that Trump is motivated by personal slights or by people flattering him. You know, Zelensky, Putin, Bukele, Netanyahu, bin Salman. Like Trump is really susceptible. You know, Kim Jong-un. You know, he's very susceptible to either flattery or any perceived slight. And Trump himself mentioned this week the dancing. Let's go to this clip.
Years, and he's a violent guy. He gets up there and he tries to imitate my dance a little bit. But he's a violent.
Yeah, so that's one, right? So it's the perceived slight thing. He just doesn't like the guy. That's one. Two is I think Trump has the attention of a sugar addicted 16-year-old video game player, and I think he loves getting into the Situation Room and telling people in uniform to carry out these types of operations. I think he loved whatever the Iran thing was, and he loved watching himself on TV and Fox News, being commanding. And I think he loved it. He loved every aspect of this, getting the updates on how what the troops are doing and all this kind of stuff. I think that's his primary motivation here, a combination of personal slight plus boredom.
Ravi, there is a direct line between how a president who watched all these, action movies and says when he's watching these operations play out live that it's like watching an action movie, right? Who really doesn't believe in the humanity behind, of the people in the uniform, and we have lots of, in my opinion, evidence of that. And what happened today in Minneapolis, right? To me, it's the same kind of personality, the same kind of insecurity that causes a person who, is in the situation that the ICE agent was in to immediately go to violence, to believe that that is the move. And a person like Trump, who, as I believe you're right, who gets off on the idea that he can have a completely non-secure room in Mar-a-Lago where what's up on the monitors is Twitter, and, act like he's the president in a war movie. And just when you have the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor in the same job, and you have a Secretary of War who is an empty suit, and you put him there for the purpose of you being able to be the Secretary of Defense, which you now, named the Secretary of War. And then on top of that, you hire a Director of National Intelligence with no experience in intelligence whatsoever. You're doing that because you don't believe in the intelligence community and you want that job to be done by you as well. You're doing it because you want to be at the center of all this. And you, for as much as you say you're the peace president, what you want is to be a wartime commander in chief, because that's what dictators do. That's how you consolidate power. And that level of insecurity gets a lot of people killed. And it got somebody killed in Minneapolis today.
Yeah, we also we don't need to talk too much about this, but the plans actually leaked. I don't know if you know about this, to major newspapers, and they didn't print the story because of the journalistic practice of not sharing information that could put our soldiers at risk. Rubio confirmed that. So this actually could have been way worse. Like, there's some Keystone Cops elements to this for all the sophistication of the extraction itself. But let's take a break and come back. We're going to talk more about this.
Can I add, though, before we go, that if it leaked that way, if you're having these meetings in Mar-a-Lago, which is probably the most foreign collected signals intelligence location in the world at this point, in a room that's not secure, if they leak to journalists and newspapers, then I promise you China and Russia knew about this stuff beforehand too.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back. We've got way more to talk about on this subject.
Boll & Branch's signature sheets are really a game changer. The first night I slept in them, I was wondering how much of a difference sheets can they really make? But the moment I settled in, I felt it. A deeper softness, breathability, quality you can't imagine until you're surrounded by it. Boll and Branch's signature sheets have a comfort and quality beyond imagination. They're woven by artisans with the finest 100% organic cotton, with a difference in craftsmanship that you can immediately feel. They're buttery soft to start, and they're made to get softer with every wash. Expertly designed for breathable sleep, so you can add cool layers in summer and cozy essentials in the winter. Loved by millions of sleepers and available in over 25 colors, from cool blues to warm neutrals to deeply romantic purples. And they are yours to try with a 30-night worry-free guarantee. My Boll and Branch sheets are amazing. They truly do seem to get softer with every wash, and my sleep has been deep and restful ever since I switched over. These are so much better than my old bedding. How much better do they feel compared to your old bedding? Discover a softness beyond your wildest dreams with Boll and Branch. Get 15% off your first set of sheets plus free shipping at bollandbranch.com/majority with code majority. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND branch.com/majority, code majority to unlock 15% off. Exclusions apply. It's 2026. Do you still feed your cat like it's 1926? This podcast is sponsored by Smalls. For a limited time, get 60% off your first order plus free shipping when you head to smalls.com/majority54. Smalls cat food is protein-packed recipes made with preservative-free ingredients you'd find in your fridge, and it's delivered right to your door. That's why Cats.com named Smalls their best overall cat food. Starting with Smalls is easy. Just share info about your cat's diet, health, and food preferences. Then Smalls puts together a personalized sampler for your cat. No more picking between random brands at the store. Smalls has the right food to satisfy any cat's cravings. Here's something cool. Forbes ranks Smalls the best overall cat food. I don't have a cat, so Smalls sent me a sample. I gave it to a friend of ours who does have a cat. They said that their cat loves it, that the cat's breath is much better, which, not a cat owner, but if I had a cat with bad breath, that would seem very important to me. The team at Smalls is so confident that your cat will love their product that you can try it risk-free. That means they'll refund you if your cat won't eat their food. Make 2026 your cat's healthiest year yet. For a limited time, because you are a Majority 54 listener, you get 60% off your first order plus free shipping when you head to smalls.com/majority54. One last time, that's 60% off your first order plus free shipping when you head to smalls.com/majority54.
Well, let me take through a couple of other items here related to this. One is people have been asking me, well, isn't this guy a head of state who enjoys immunity? And I looked into this, and it seems like there's the Noriega precedent here from when the U.S. captured Manuel Noriega, where essentially the executive branch gets to say who they think is a head of state or not, and the courts have given it deference historically. I mean, that was an 11th Circuit case, but that's where we are, and that and I don't have a lot of faith in our current makeup of our courts to break with the very little precedent we have on this, and so I doubt that the immunity is going to be a successful defense, and that's probably his only defense, from what I can imagine. The other thing I was wondering, Jason, is I worked at the United Nations. You got to think that a lot of these countries, they send their head of state to the General Assembly every year, and at various points other years, including tons of diplomats and whatnot. You got to imagine a lot of countries are going to think twice about ever sending their head of state on American soil after this.
I would think so. And sadly, that seems to be exactly what the Trump administration wants. Now, what I will say about the immunity claim, because look, I want to be clear for folks, like, we are not, and neither should you be when you talk to people in your lives about this, people who just automatically say that every position that the Trump administration takes, that we take the opposite one. I would agree that immunity would not extend to this person because there was an election and this person lost. By the way, so did, their vice president, who is still there and has been blessed by the Trump administration to stay in office. But from that point of view, I agree. I don't think that the head of state immunity would apply because they weren't supposed to be the head of state. They stayed in office in what was essentially a coup by staying in office, which
a perfectly acceptable
say
outcome
on January 7th.
Yeah, perfectly acceptable outcome from their perspective is the vice president takes over and essentially everything stays the same except Trump looks tougher
and we get oil.
We get oil. That's and that's what he wants.
That's anyway, I think we said it.
Well, on the oil question, just a little background for people here. Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves in the world. And as I allude to, this is 303 billion barrels approximately, so more than Saudi Arabia. The problem is that it's a particularly extra heavy kind of crude. People compare it to like liquid asphalt or molasses. And the peak of oil production was in 1998. And ever since then, it's kind of gone down, especially with Chavez, as I mentioned. And basically, Chavez and Maduro have treated it like a piggy bank and have invested. Chavez especially just decimated the oil industry and installed his own people who didn't know what they were doing. And then under Maduro, we've had this regime where there's like a combination of Chevron, who got a treasury license to take about a quarter of the oil out of Venezuela and be able to circumvent the sanctions. So they get about 25% of the production. And China has about 75% of the exports as the primary buyer through a series of different intermediaries. But one key thing to keep in mind is that they've been sending somewhere between 15,000 and 30,000 barrels per day to Cuba, and essentially keeping Cuba afloat. And with this spigot literally being cut off, Cuba is descending into extremely dire circumstances. And the administration is cheering this on and hoping that this will be a tool of regime change, not too far from our borders.
Who we put into place matters. It is, Harry Truman famously said that history is not the result of circumstances. History is made by to paraphrase, by the people who were in power and who were making the decisions at the time. Marco Rubio is a Cuban American politician whose politics and his originating ideology in politics is one of hawkishness towards Cuba. I in no way begrudge him that point of view. Somebody from that background, that makes sense to me, right? But when you make that person both the national security advisor and the Secretary of State, you are going to have a foreign and national security policy that centers Cuba right in the middle of the crosshairs. And look at what they've been saying the last couple of days. They've been really emphasizing the fact that Maduro's security apparatus around him and the guards that were killed by our Delta Force operators that went in were largely Cubans who were being provided to him by Cuba. And then they are embracing what you just pointed out, that oil being cut off to Cuba will probably, or have a good chance of, destabilizing the long in office, starting with Castro, Cuban dictatorship and communist regime. And so it starts to feel like, from the point of view of our Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, that the reason that we have gone into Venezuela and detained their president and brought him to the United States is to effect a regime change that will lead to a regime change in Cuba. And it just happens to be the case that Trump had all this backing from oil executives and oil companies who were cheering him on and doing this because they had something to gain. Otherwise, he can't accomplish this. So it really does feel like the point of this was Cuba.
Yeah, and the way I think of it is we've traded global leadership under pre-Trump for regional leadership at best. And when I say regional leadership, it's not even leadership, because if you think about it, Canada hates us. We're insulting Mexico now too. We're insulting Colombia. Obviously, we just talked about Venezuela and Cuba. So leadership with like air quotes around it, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the bargain that we have now. We also have the Greenland question. And there was, Rubio is quoted up and down all over the place saying that, the only avenue here is by purchasing it, and they're not going to do military action, whatever. That's what he's saying. But then here's a clip of Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, talking to Jake Tapper about this.
Important topic. The premier of Greenland and the premier of Denmark and other Danish officials are responding to a Twitter post from your wife Katie Miller, herself a former Trump White House official, showing Greenland covered with an American flag, saying soon. After that was posted, President Trump repeated the claim that the U.S. needs Greenland for national security reasons. The Danish prime minister responded to this in an interview earlier today, as reported by Bloomberg, quote, "I believe one should take the American president seriously when he says it wants Greenland, but I will also make it clear that if the U.S. chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including NATO, and thus the security that has been established since the end of the Second World War." Can you rule out that the U.S. is ever going to try to take Greenland by force?
Well, let me go back a step. The president has been clear for months now, so I know you're treating this as breaking news. The president has been clear for months now that the United States should be the nation that has Greenland as part of our overall security apparatus. The United
Right, but
States,
your wife posted that like hours after the Venezuela operation.
No, but
that's why it's newly relevant.
No, I'm not, and I'll talk with you about it for an hour. I think it's a really important conversation. I just wanted to reset, Jake, by making clear that it has been the formal position of the U.S. government since the beginning of this administration, frankly, going back into the previous Trump administration, that Greenland should be part of the United States. The president has been very clear about that. That is the formal position of the U.S. government.
Right, but can you say that military action against Greenland is off the table?
It wouldn't be military action against Greenland. The Greenland has a population of 30,000 people, Jake. The real question is, by what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? What is the basis of their territorial claim? What is their basis of having Greenland as a colony of Denmark? The United States is the power of NATO. For the United States to secure the Arctic region, to protect and defend NATO and NATO interests, obviously Greenland should be part of the United States. And so that's a conversation that we're going to have as a country. That's a process we're going to have as a community of nations.
So you can't take it off the table that the U.S. would use military force to seize Greenland. You can't take it off the table.
Jake, I understand you're trying very hard to, which again is your job. I respect it. It's great to get exactly the headline, right? That catchy headline.
I'm trying to get an answer to the question.
That says Miller refuses to rule out the United States should have Greenland as part of the United States. There's no need to even think or talk about this in the context that you're asking of a military operation. Nobody's going to fight the United States militarily over the future of Greenland. So
one last question, Stephen.
Doesn't make any sense.
One last question.
What he just said at the end is the same thing as saying we could take it without resistance. Yeah. That's what he's saying. And that's clearly what they're thinking. In the same interview, Stephen Miller said that the United States is a superpower and is going to start acting like a superpower now. And what bothers me about that was many things, one of which is they clearly have the same approach to foreign policy and national security that they do to masculinity, which is lead with insecurity and imagine that everything is strength and that nothing is warmth or kindness and everything will work out well. But that's how you end up in Iraq, right? Because what are we talking about here? We're talking not about making the influence of the United States larger. We're actually, as you pointed out right before we went to that clip, talking about making the influence of the United States smaller. Why? Because it means everything we will have to do, militarily or diplomatically, we will have to do ourselves, right? Which is how we got into Iraq largely by ourselves versus Afghanistan, where we had a large coalition. They're talking about taking territory from a NATO ally. To give people context for that, for my deployment in Afghanistan, the military authorized me to wear four, but two functionally combat patches. One, U.S. Central Command, which was the higher authority, a couple others that it doesn't matter, we can get into. And one of them is the NATO patch, because we were under NATO, right? We fought with NATO. Other countries fought beside us, which is how we were able to do what we were able to do. I worked alongside soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines from all sorts of different countries. And you make your country smaller when you concern yourself only with things like what's going on in your hemisphere, or taking things from your allies and therefore causing them to no longer be your allies.
Well, we're running out of time, but I do want to talk a little Epstein, because I do think in some ways it's related. Like, obviously, like, do I think this is a straight wag the dog on Epstein? No. Do I think it in somewhere deep inside the recesses of his brain and in his White House, They love us talking about anything but the cover up on Epstein, of course.
I don't think it's that deep in the recesses. It's a nice benefit for them.
Well, I'm gonna play you two clips, Jason. Let's start with Representative Massey talking about the Department of Justice.
For the fact that these Epstein files still, there are millions of more documents that they're still reviewing at this point.
You know, if this were a private law firm with 5% of the resources of the DOJ, this would have been done by the deadline. And they just missed another deadline, which is the report to Congress, which is supposed to list all of the politicians that are in their files. And also, they're supposed to justify all the redactions 15 days after the first 30-day window. But the biggest problem isn't that they're missing the deadlines, is what they're redacting. So they're citing the Privacy Act, and they're trying to pretend like that overrides a law that we just passed that says you can't withhold records to prevent embarrassment. They're also citing FOIA standards, which don't apply to our law when they're trying to say that they don't have to release internal decisions. But our bill specifically says release internal decisions.
So what are you going to do about it?
We're looking at that.
So I don't know anything about Massey other than what we play on this, and I'm sure there are a million things I disagree with him on. But I'll tell you this. So many of the people who stand up to Trump do it with one foot out the door. This guy is just, he's going in with two barrels. Like, he's just going full on with a smile on his face and full gusto on the things he cares about. And for that, I am grateful for him.
You got to hand it to this dude, and the other person you got to hand it to, honestly, is Rand Paul, because Massey's in Kentucky, right? I mean, and he seems to have a pretty good hold on that district, and Rand Paul seems to have a pretty good hold on that state. And there is clearly, I think Rand Paul had a lot to do with this. There's a libertarian streak in that state, and there are plenty of people in that state who support Donald Trump and will vote for Donald Trump, and at the same time feel like, yeah, I like that I have a Republican member of Congress who's holding Donald Trump accountable, particularly because it seems to work for them, because oftentimes they are holding Donald Trump accountable from either from the right in some cases or from somewhat of a partisan neutral place, right? The Epstein files, that's kind of a partisan neutral place to hold them accountable from. Military intervention and adventurism around the world, not only a partisan neutral place, really, frankly, sort of really coming from the vibe of why a lot of people voted for Trump, because they thought there'd be less adventurism. So yeah, I don't think Massey's going anywhere. And I agree with you. Whether you have to consider that person part of the resistance or whatever they are, like, I appreciate what they're doing, what he's doing in that regard.
Well, one more clip here on the Epstein front. This is from the alt media universe. This is Theo Von, the podcaster, with Dave Smith, who's the comic who is a sidekick to Rogan very often, who loves to talk about Israel stuff. But you'll only see a faint insertion of the Israel stuff here. This is mostly just straight Epstein, and this is how they're talking. And Von, I think, endorsed Trump, or at least had Trump on his podcast. So let's listen to this.
Everybody has a constituency and an incentive here, and the constituency of folks like Theo Von seems to be telling people that there's a conspiracy all the time, and that they're not on the inside of it. And now Trump's in power, and he is part of a conspiracy with regard to the Epstein files, it appears, and they're not immune from this because they're not Republicans, right? They're podcasters.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to end. One for us, Jason. What's happening in your world?
I went into 2026 with an intention to speak my mind more, and to, and I thought a lot about it over the break, while the kids were on break and everything, of how I wanted to do that. Running for office did not enter my mind. But, going on cable more, doing more events, showing up at more things, campaigning with candidates more. And ultimately what I settled on is that I want to be able to do it more on my terms. And so, I decided, I have a decent sized social media platform, and I'm going to use it more. So in the last few days, I've been, opening the video, just turning my phone toward me and hitting record, and and I'm recording 2-minute videos a couple times a day, and it seems to be well received by people. It's also giving me either actual or the illusion of agency, which is helpful to me. And so I'm going to be doing that more. So if people are interested in hearing more of what they hear from us on the show, for me, if you don't already follow me on Instagram, it's at Jason Kander. And so I have a lot more to say, and I intend to say it in 2026. That's an intention I have set.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can get competitive with your wife, who I know has a 1-year head start on that intention.
She, yes, I used to have the largest social media platform. I guess maybe I still do if you take it across. I do if you take it across all the different platforms, but certainly on Instagram, yeah, she has a lot of followers.
Well, that's awesome, man. I think we haven't been on here in a bit. I think we talked on the phone about this, but I got in a motorcycle accident here.
And then seem to have immediately rebounded like the freak you are.
I try, I for the audience's sake, I was riding not even fast. I was just riding this motorcycle, and I skidded out on, it was like a dirt road, and wound up in a ditch with the inability to get up. And I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. It was scary for a bit. And these security guards wound up pulling me out of the ditch and walking me down the street. Thankfully, down the street, there was an urgent care center, which actually happens to also be in the building I'm staying at here. And they popped my shoulder back into place, and there doesn't appear to be any other major damage. So I've been rehabbing from that. And yeah, there's certain things I can do and not do. Like I still haven't been able to surf since then. That was 2.5 weeks ago now. And I've been playing like a little bit of tennis, like mini tennis, and trying to work my way back there. Strangely, I could do some weightlifting, but not others, but not the things you'd think. Like I can actually do arm exercises and things, but I can't do back squat because of the weird way that the angle that your arm does in a back squat. So yeah, I've been just rehabbing, and I just, motorcycles are dangerous. And I've been warned about that by many people, including my parents, for a long time. And I had to experience it myself to truly understand it.
Well, you're clearly wearing a helmet.
Yeah, we'll say that.
Okay.
I was not wearing. I was not wearing a helmet. I normally don't. I'm gonna get a ton of DMs about this. I normally wear a helmet. I was going a couple blocks. I should have still worn the helmet there, but I didn't. But now I've learned my lesson.
Does it hurt when you sleep on that side?
Sleeping is the worst. I don't sleep that much. Yeah, sleeping is the main obstacle now, because also is a prime opportunity to mess with it because of the angles you sleep.
Well, when you get, I know because of the mattress sponsors we have that you sleep on your side.
There you go. Yeah, and I happen to sleep on the wrong side, so I have to retrain my body. Yeah, I sleep into that shoulder usually. So,
when you get back to the U.S., you definitely are going to need an MRI.
Yeah, I haven't gotten one here, and
or you can get one there. Yeah.
No, you can't get one in anywhere around here. I have to go a couple hours.
When do you head home?
I will be going on the 24th back to New Orleans for a month. So yeah.
All right. Well, this is a crazy, awful day, but I enjoyed talking to you about it, or at least it was better to have this conversation. So thank you. I guess I'm supposed to end the show. I'm so out of sorts from the way we started this and how pissed off I am about what happened in Minneapolis today. Thanks everybody for listening. You can follow Ravi everywhere at Ravi M. Gupta. You can follow me everywhere, as I said, at Jason Kander. And please do leave a 5-star review for the show. Let us know, how we've been doing lately. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.